ADU, Accessory Dwelling Unit. So where did this all start? How did this come about, the ADUs?
So ADUs actually has been around for a very, very long time. We're just calling them ADUs all of a sudden. 3 years ago, California legislative came out with some new laws to help address the housing crisis. They realized that we're about 40,000 homes short in Southern California alone. 40,000 homes short.
Wow.
And so in a space where we're running out of land to build on, our leadership said, you know what, let's turn to the homeowners and look at everybody's backyards. There's existing space there. I mean, that's the simplest terms. It's like, let's look in people's backyards. So now, as a result of some new laws that have passed, I'd say about 3 years ago to today, now we have the opportunity to take advantage of existing square footage in somebody's backyard or like a garage and turn it into a livable space. So now we can answer that housing crisis that we currently have, and every single homeowner out there can participate in addressing this issue. And in so doing, there's a lot of money to be made for themselves. Like, that's the benefit. Yes, we're addressing the housing crisis, but more importantly to those homeowners, they can take advantage of the dead space they're not using in their backyard or the dead space that they're not using in their garage and make money with it. It is such a lucrative opportunity right now.
Wow.
It's what I call a win-win situation. You literally cannot go wrong with an ADU.
Wow. Okay, so is this just a California thing? Is this just in a heavy populated area thing? Is the same thing going on in New York, or is it?
Well, I can speak to California.
Is it, or wherever densely populated things are?
It's all of California.
So if because like I'm from Missouri, when I originally started, it's not like we don't talk about having an ADU, obviously, because everyone has just infinity amount of land, right? So,
well, they may be calling it something different, but like I said, the idea of ADUs has always been around. In the past, they've been called granny flats or casitas, tiny homes.
Okay.
You know, lots of people have been doing it. It's gone back many, many, many years. But in California, the new buzzword is ADU, Accessory Dwelling Units. Or if you're in the city of San Diego, they call it a companion unit.
Okay.
There's many names out there.
Cool. And they've written special laws specifically for this purpose.
Yeah, well, ADUs came up as a result of several different legislative pieces that have come out 3 years ago, maybe 4 years at this point. But where we're at today, you know, California came out with the ADU initiative, and every local jurisdiction has been mandated to get behind this movement and show that they're supporting the ADU initiative in some way. And so for that reason, every single city, for example, is going to have their own spin on ADUs. Now, they cannot make the ADU situation any more difficult, right? They can make it more easier to work with, but they cannot put any extra rules on the ADUs that California has already put out. Here's an example.
Okay.
California says you can have up to 1,200 square feet of an ADU if it's a detached unit, right? So a local jurisdiction cannot say, well, we're only going to let you do 1,000 square feet, right?
Gotcha.
But they can say, like Poway, we're going to let you do up to 1,500 square feet.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you definitely want to take a look at your local jurisdiction wherever you're at and see what those ADU rules are.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, is it possible that some areas are not in conformance with California? Yeah, for sure. Because ADUs is relatively new, the concepts are new, and frankly, the rules are changing every single day. There is a little bit of a time lag. You know, as an example, California has said that ADUs under a certain square footage, like 800 square feet, under 16 feet tall, is supposed to be handled ministerially during the permit review process. So what does ministerially mean? In layman's terms, it's not supposed to have an excessive amount of review layered on top of it, right?
Okay.
One example is a coastal review. I'm sitting here in this beautiful town, Carlsbad, and this is all coastal area, right? Yeah. So there is an extra layer of review process that has to happen because we're in the coastal review. ADUs are not supposed to have that extra layer of review, like coastal review. However, San Diego, if it's a detached ADU, they are requiring these units to go through a coastal review, and it's not supposed to. Ooh. So the point being is this: you cannot just go off of the California rules. You really have to take a look at your local jurisdictions and understand, familiarize yourself with those specific guidelines. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who's going to permit your ADU plans. Yeah. True story. Somebody reached out to me and said, hey, I'm so confused. I'm getting mixed information about what I can and cannot do about the ADUs. I said, okay, well, what are they telling you? And she shared with me what one contractor was saying versus what some architect was saying. And I responded to her saying, well, technically, they're both right. And here's why they're saying what they're saying. Crickets, dead silence for a week. I finally responded back to her and said, hey, is everything okay? What's going on? And she said, well, what you're saying is not in alignment with what California's saying. And I said, you're absolutely right. Welcome to my world. Yeah. That's the world that we live in today, right? So, wow. Point being is, for anybody who's listening to this, is California rules, the guidelines on ADUs is your starting point, but at the end of the day, you really have to abide by what your local jurisdictions are saying, and all the rules are very, very different.
Cool. Yeah, so now if we were to, so let's do like a practical application for an ADU, not saying just to fulfill one of those spots where the housing crisis situation, not just say, hey, we need more houses, let's get an ADU. We can fill those spots. But let's look at it for if I'm selling a house or if I'm buying a house, what are the benefits and cons, the pros and cons of an ADU unit? Now, for example, if I'm selling a house, if I'm going, hey, I'm going to sell this house, I got a backyard. Do I go build an ADU and I go get more money for the house? Is that a strategy or is it, I already have an existing thing, let's turn it into a livable space so then I can sell it for multi-doors? What's the strategy behind bringing an ADU to market as if I'm a seller selling a house?
Great question. What I'm seeing out in the marketplace today is sellers are actually selling their property with a set of ADU plans.
Whoa.
Meaning they've already started the process. They haven't gone all the way to the point where those plans are permitted, but at least they've started the process. And it's an interesting play to me, at least, because one, it shows that what the ADU potential is. Two, it shows that you've already started the process, so it's that much easier for the buyer to do the ADU in the backyard. And then therefore, you could potentially raise the price of your house that you're asking for.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
After ADU.
After the ADU is...
Estimate.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct.
Yeah.
But if you've got a piece of property, if you've got that backyard to work with, if you've got that garage to work with, it's always cheaper to build than to buy. In this case, if you're the seller, it's going to be worth your while to build that ADU and then sell your property with that ADU on it already.
Gotcha. So now is there just because it's called an ADU, it has to be technically detached from the house?
Great question. So there's different types of ADUs. You've got attached ADUs and then you've got detached ADUs.
Okay.
So detached ADUs can be up to 1,200 square feet, as long as you've got the space to work with. Okay. Now, if it's an attached ADU, you could only have 50% of the existing structure can be the size of your ADU. Said differently, if it's an attached ADU, it could only be half the size of your existing house.
Okay.
So if it's 1,000 square feet home that you have and you want to do an attached ADU, it could only be 500 square feet.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
1,200 square feet is always the max. That's the general rule of thumb. So if you have a 10,000 square foot house, 50% of that would be 5,000 square feet, but because it's capped at 1,200 square feet, no matter what, your ADU can't be larger than.
Okay. Otherwise, it would just be considered add-on.
It would be an add-on,
Just be an add-on. It would.
And if it's just going to be an add-on, then you've got different rules to play with. But there are incentives for calling your add-on, as an example, an ADU, because ADUs have different setback reliefs. For example, every home, every property has certain setbacks, and that is basically an invisible area that runs along the lines of your property lines, your side property lines, your rear property lines, your front property lines. Okay, there's an invisible area that you cannot build in. With an ADU, that invisible area shrinks down to just 4 feet, depending on the local jurisdiction that you're in. But the general rule is 4 feet.
Wow. Okay? Yeah.
So again, that's one example of an incentive that's out there for building an ADU, is you've got easier setbacks to work with.
Yeah. Okay. So now if I'm a homeowner and I'm getting ready to sell my house and I'm like, I'm going to throw an ADU in the backyard,
Yep.
And one, I guess it would be, you're doing 1,200 square feet. What's the cost per square foot, or how much is it going to cost to put the whole thing up? And then how much are you going to recoup on the end? And that timeline, how fast can these things pop up? You can just come in and just go.
So realistically, hate to be the bad news bear, but the reality of it is if you're actually going to build this ADU start to finish, meaning designs, permits, then build, you are definitely looking at a 6 to 9 month journey.
Okay.
At a minimum. It should only take somebody about 6 weeks to come up with the designs, but then it's going to take 9 to 12 weeks for the permitting process. At that point, you're like 4 or 5 months into this thing. And then at that point, it's going to be 3 to 4 months to actually build, depending on, the general contractor you're working with, depending on the inspections that have to happen. So this is easily going to be a 6, 7, 8, 9 month project for sure.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. But the question tonight is, from a selling standpoint, is it better to hold on just a little longer, build the ADU, then sell the property with the ADU, or should we just sell it now? Yeah. And I think everybody's personal situation is different. So the low-hanging fruit is to get what's called a feasibility study done. And somebody can generate a report and say, this is what's possible from an ADU perspective. This is what you can and cannot do on this property. Here's all the technical jargon as it relates to this property. Here's a cost estimate of what it would take to build an ADU here based off of the dynamics of that property. Here's a time frame. You have that level of detail worked out, which is only a few $100. And you provide that report to all of your interested buyers, and that should help them see like what's possible. It may not yield extra dollars in terms of selling price, but it could certainly help expedite the sale, right?
Okay.
It's going to draw much more attention.
That's
Your property is going to be much more.
So that would be, no matter what, it seems the case, that would be the place where someone would want to start.
Great question. Yes.
What'd you call that again?
Feasibility study.
A feasibility study.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's step one.
So step one, I went through all of that just to get to step one.
Step with a feasibility study.
Yes. Feasibility study.
For your ADU.
So like WDU Geeks, we do feasibility studies, and I'm not trying to sell our services. I really just want to promote the idea of ADUs and what's possible. But there's many companies out there that can provide a feasibility study report, and that will show somebody what is possible on their property from an ADU perspective. Again, how much is it going to cost? What's the time frame? What's the ROI?
Oh, cool.
What's all the setbacks that we just talked about? What's the height limitations? What's the lot coverage, the floor? There's so many different things that we have to think about. You have that in a report. Now you can go into your ADU project with your eyes wide open. You know exactly what you're getting into. If you do the ADU project without that feasibility report, it's no different than driving blind. And then don't be surprised when you get hit with oh, this is how much it's going to cost, and you get hit with all these added expenses that you weren't budgeting for. It's going to happen out there.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to know all that stuff up front.
Oh, sure.
Well, you do
Right,
that
before-
with the feasibility study.
Yeah. So now when we're done with that step one, what's the transition into this stage two of the whole thing?
Sure.
Do we need to do financing? Do we need to buy it outright? Do we go to a HELOC on it and flip it around? Or if we just bought the house, do we write it into the current loan and we just build it right when we buy the house?
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure there's all different kind of ways you can get involved with this, but what would be a logical step two in this after the study's over?
The best way to do this, step two must be financing. Okay? It makes no sense to get into this project only to find out you can't qualify for the financing, right?
Okay.
So always start with the financing. Once you have your feasibility study, you know how much this thing could potentially cost. Now you know how much to ask for from a lender. Figure out if you can get qualified for that much. There's plenty of lenders who know how to finance these ADU deals. Okay.
Is this a different kind of lending?
No, you could do this with
it
conventional lending. You could do it with a home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, a construction or remodel loan.
Oh.
That's really, really popular with these ADUs, and I'd love to talk about that.
Cool.
But for right now, the point is you've got to have that financing conversation up front, and that needs to be the guiding factor as to what your budget is. Therefore, this is what you can afford to build, or this is what you cannot afford. Mm-hmm. So step two is financing.
Who's got my money?
That's right.
You go get some money and you builder's going to build.
That's right. So then after you've got the financing piece figured out, step three really is the design phase. So you can start your design phase with either a draftsman or an architect. There's a difference.
Ooh.
It's like a lawyer versus a legal assistant, if you will.
Oh, so who's the...
Or a CPA versus a bookkeeper. Okay. So an architect, you're going to get what you pay for. Architects are twice as much, but they come to the table with years and years of technical experience. Okay. The level of detail in their plans is going to be greater than a draftsman. But here's the reality. We're not building the Eiffel Tower in your backyard. It's an ADU. It's a tiny house in your backyard.
Right.
You don't have to have that level of detail. And I know I'm not going to win myself any friends amongst architects right now, but the reality is this.
Yeah.
You do not need architects for an ADU. So if there's any place to save yourself some money, bam, it's right there. I literally just saved you $5,000 for telling you you don't need an architect, go with a draftsman.
Wow.
Now, you want to vet your draftsman and make sure that you're working with somebody who's really good, has maybe done ADUs.
Do you have a draftsman? Are you a draftsman?
I've got two draftsmen.
You got two draftsmen.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
I've got an architect.
Oh, shit. You got them all.
There are times when
Cool.
we do need to bring in an architect, and I'll share with you an example.
Yeah.
So HOAs, there's a rule out there, AB 670, where it clearly states that HOAs cannot stop ADUs from happening, right?
Really?
However,
Wow.
HOAs can, and they have the right to review the plans. They have a right to know what's going on. They have a right to have their level of requirements. And one of them often is they want plans signed off by an architect. Okay. Well, in my situation, over at WDU Geeks with our architect, he will gladly review the plan, sign off on it, but it's a way that we save the client money by not immediately bringing the big dog to the table when it's not needed.
Is this, you would have the draftsman draft it and the architect sign it and boom?
Yes.
Instead of the architect building it all.
The draftsman would draw most of it.
You just get approved.
And during the design process, the architect is supervising the process all the way through.
Okay.
And then he's able to sign off at the very end. So that's how we do it. That's not how everybody does it. Point being is, if you're doing the ADU, you just know from a design perspective, you do not have to have an architect. And that's the only point I want to make.
Yeah. So what are you kind of doing at an 80? You were working with 1,200 square feet max. And then, so we come in, we put in 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom.
You could do up to 3 bedrooms.
3 bedrooms.
1,200 square feet. That's plenty of space.
Okay.
Plenty of space. I do want to qualify why it is we don't need architects on an ADU.
Okay. Yeah.
Let me just make this statement.
Because I'm trying to think, like, what do we build in that an architect would be?
So in California, any residential project that is 2 stories or less does not require an architect. And that's why I'm saying that.
Okay.
All right. So once you're in the design phase, what you can expect is what's called schematic designs versus the design development, stage 1, stage 2. So your schematic design, just think of it as like space planning, okay? Let's plan out the space. So first we're gonna draw your site plans. This is your property, this is your existing structure, and then this is where the ADU is gonna go, and this is how everything is gonna tie in together, right? That's your site plan. Then we're gonna zoom in to the actual ADU and show the floor plans. Again, this is under the umbrella of space planning.
Okay. Yeah.
The value in that is figuring out, okay, once we see it on paper, we may or may not like the way the floor plan works.
Gotcha.
We get your feedback and then ultimately get the floor plan the way you want it, because you're going to be living with this thing. So it's got to be perfect, right?
Cool.
That takes about 3 weeks. Then the next 3 weeks is the time that we need to get all the detail, the construction detail dialed in so that we have a complete set of plans that has been properly reviewed and signed off on. And then ultimately we submit that over to the city or the county, depending on where you're at, and we have it reviewed for permits. Now you're in the permit phase. The permit phase you can expect to be 9 to 12 weeks.
Okay.
And that's
what kind of permits are we getting here? Electric, sewer,
everything, building permits, electric, sewer, all of that.
Insurances, or what do you got to go on? What goes on with that?
You're going.
I don't know, I've never been there.
When you submit the plans to the city or the county, it's going to go through addressing. It's going to go through zoning. It's going to go through the building. It's going to go through electrical. Like every department is going to have their opportunity to review their plans. Okay. So that's why it takes so long. Now, California does have a rule out there that says local jurisdictions, you've got 60 days to make a decision on these things. And left it at that. That is open to interpretation. What does that mean? Are we talking calendar days? Are we talking work days? What happens when the city's replies with review comments? Now I've got the hot potato. Is the clock ticking? So the 60 days serves as a budgeting tool. You could plan for 60 working days, but really that clock starts ticking when they acknowledge the submission. Here's an example of what I mean. If I submit plans to the city of San Diego right now, they are delayed by about 2 weeks. So the clock's not even ticking until they acknowledge my submission 2 weeks later. Okay. So bottom line is permits are taking 9 to 12 weeks right now. And the permitting fees could be anywhere from $4,500 to $7,000. It really depends on where you're at.
Wow. Yeah.
If you're in County of San Diego, they're waiving the building permit fees right now.
Really? They want you to build, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
That's one of the many ways where local jurisdictions are showing California that they are promoting these ADUs. Okay?
Yeah.
So thanks to the county supervisors, they're the ones who passed and approved this idea of let's just waive building permit fees and make it super easy for folks to build these ADUs. But not all local jurisdictions are doing that.
Interesting. Okay? Yeah.
So
now we got the permits. The permits passed 9 to 12 weeks later. Boom, permits ready. Now we're going in to dig.
Now you got building permits.
Yeah.
And with those building permits, or what we call in the industry stamped plans, now you want to get bids from contractors. And you always want to get more than one. I would suggest 3 or more.
Are you a contractor?
Bids. I am not.
But you find contractors, or do you go bid for them?
I've got vetted contractors.
Okay.
I am not. Let me say that again. Yeah. I am not a general contractor.
Cool.
I am not an architect. I am an ADU expert. Okay. Cool. So I have seen everything there is to see out there when it comes to these tiny homes.
Yeah.
When you get bids from general contractors, First of all, they're only going to bid on stamped plans, meaning completed plans.
Whoa.
They know that if the plans aren't permitted yet, there's a very high likelihood that those plans will change. So a lot of these guys or gals won't waste their time until you've got permitted plans. Okay.
Cool.
Now, if they do give you bids based off of your unpermitted plans, that's cool too. Just know something could change. And if the city requires a change, you make the change, that's also going to change the bid that contractor provides.
Sure.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So fast forward, you've got yourself 3 different bids to work from. And I want to be the one to tell you this. Don't be the guy or gal who's looking for the cheapest bid. Okay. Cheap is usually more expensive in the long run. Okay. The thing that you want to look for is really, how's the personality? How's the relationship? Are you guys clicking? That's important because you're going to be in that project for the next 3 to 4 months. So that's number one.
Oh, wow.
Number two, any good contractor out there is not going to have the time to start on your project right then and there.
Oh, yeah.
All good contractors are going to be backlogged by a few weeks, to be honest with you. So you want to keep that in mind as well. Always ask for references. Ask to see if they've built and completed any ADUs. Ask to see them. Drive by them. Don't bother the tenants, but drive by and take a look, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Ask questions like, do you actually do the build or do you subcontract everything out? If they subcontract everything out, that's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. In fact, in many cases, it's smart and it's efficient, right? But you're going to want to know this up front. You want to know how the project's being managed, how it's being handled. These are all great questions to ask.
Cool.
Okay.
Is that something me as the homeowner has to worry about? All this stuff going on? Or is that someone like you're the buffer in between me and the homeowner?
Ultimately, it is something that you want to be interested in, and you want to be in the loop, right? You want to know what's going on. But somebody like me at WDU Geeks, I do all of that for you. It's literally a one-stop shop. So I would help during the design phase. I would deal with the city or the county and get those permits so that you don't have to deal with it. If there's any questions, if there's any back and forth with the city and county, we would take care of that for you. And then on the contracting side of the house, we have our contractors who would provide bids on the stamped plans, but I'm still here with you all the way through to the very end. So I am not only the ADU expert helping you through the design phase, but I'm also your project manager all the way through the construction phase too.
Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah, one-stop shop. There's a high-end consulting all the way. Throw in another 1,200 foot ADU on your property.
That's right. And depending on the zoning of your property, you could have more than one ADU.
Oh, sure. Oh, really? It's more than one. You could have 2.
You could.
1,200 both.
So single family residences rate 2 ADUs, 1 ADU and 1 junior ADU.
Whoa. Tell us about this junior ADU. I've never heard of a junior ADU before.
So a junior ADU is basically a unit that is made from existing space within the home. So think about converting like the master bedroom into a dwelling unit.
Okay.
Most master bedrooms already have a bathroom, so that's done. Now we just got to figure out a way to put a kitchenette in there. You have those 2 things, a kitchenette and a bathroom, you've got yourself a junior ADU. Cool.
Junior. Yeah, the junior ADUs. So the junior ADU, is there a limitation on the size? Does it already have to be built? Can we not just have a whole nother unit out there and pop it up? Or does it have to be a ratio about what is already existing? How do you break down a junior ADU for us a little bit more in depth than just flipping a master bathroom into a full-blown thing?
Yeah, so different than ADUs, which can be detached or attached, is this concept of a junior ADU. And if you could think of a bedroom, a master bedroom, that's essentially what your junior ADU is. The spirit and intent of a junior ADU is really to just convert existing livable space that's in your home right now into its own dwelling unit, okay? Like I said, we could convert a master bedroom that's already got a bathroom. Now we just have to add a kitchenette. What's a kitchenette? A kitchenette is no gas line, and your the stove, the microwave. Like it can't be so big. Like all you can do is plug it into a 110 socket.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, that's a kitchenette. So bathroom, kitchenette, and then the third piece for a junior ADU is you have to have a shared entryway into the main home. Again, going back to that master bedroom, it already has the door that goes into the hallway of your main home. That has to remain.
Gotcha. But you could also cut a hole in the wall and have an outdoor door?
It could have its own entryway, but you still have to have that shared entryway into the main home.
Cool.
And then the last thing, which is the kicker of a junior ADU, is junior ADUs require owner occupancy. So the homeowner has to live there on site. Doesn't have to live in that house, but it has to live on the property. Okay. So that is a huge difference between an ADU and a junior ADU. Let me run through that again. ADUs do not have to have owner occupancy. Junior ADUs do. Junior ADUs can only be up to 500 square feet. ADUs can be up to 1,200 square feet depending on where you're at. Again, if it's a detached or attached, will dictate how big your ADU can be, but it can be up to 1,200 square feet.
Cool. So now let's get into, we just went from AD, we didn't even know how ADUs kind of worked when we started this whole thing, and then we kind of got some real good clarification. Then we went to, okay, it was 1 unit, and then now we can have 2 units, and then there's a senior and a junior. It's like, how big can we get with this? How excited, how juicy can you get us with this ADU stuff?
Check this out.
Let's roll.
That was for a residential property based off of the zoning. But if the zoning is multi-unit, dude, we could have up to 2 detached ADUs, and we could convert non-habitable space already existing, like a garage. We could convert as many garages, as an example, up to 25% of the existing units, no less than 1. That's the rule. So what does that all mean? If you have 4 units on a property.
Yeah.
Okay, so with multi-unit properties, you could have up to 2 detached ADUs, and you could convert existing non-habitable space into an ADU. How many? You could do up to 25% of the existing units. So as an example, if you have 4 units right now and you've got a bunch of garages out there, you could convert garage space into 1 ADU. Why 1? Because you've got 4 units, 25% of that is 1. If you have 10 units, 25% of that is 2.5. So you could have 2 units. Convert those garages into 2 ADUs. In addition to that, you could have up to 2 detached ADUs. So in this example, that would be 4 ADUs, right? So there's a lot of different factors. I'm definitely simplifying this. There's other things that we need to consider. But for right now, just to make it simple, there is a difference between single-family residence properties versus multi-unit properties.
Cool. So if someone's already rocking like a quadplex or something, they can pop another 2 external and possibly even a garage.
Yeah.
So they could put 3 more units on that space, turn a 4 to a 7.
Yeah.
Boom, you're unstoppable.
Potentially. Yeah. Absolutely. And depending on where you're at, I mean, I'm just getting warmed up over here, but if we want to get real sexy with this thing,
let's get it.
Depending on where you're at, they're about to introduce, now this is information that isn't even on the streets yet, but this is what you get for WDU Geeks.
Ooh, breaking news coming at you hot right here. WDU Geeks.
Let's
make this happen.
Word on the streets is they're about to offer bonus ADUs.
Whoa. Bonus round.
Whoa.
So what is that? What does that entitle?
So bonus ADUs is this idea of, hey, listen, if you're willing to designate one of these ADUs for low income or moderate income, then they will give you a bonus ADU. So in an area where you may be limited to just those 2 detached ADUs, well, one strategy might be to offer one of those as a low income ADU, and then they'll offer you the ability to build another ADU. So
Wow.
where you would have been limited to 2, now you get 3.
Cool.
If you're in city of San Diego and you're within a transit priority area, the number of bonus ADUs that are allowed is unlimited.
What?
Unlimited.
So what qualifies as this, what'd you call it? Transit
Priority area.
priority.
It's an overlay. So just like looking up your address to figure out what the zoning is, there's an overlay map that will show the transit priority areas, TPAs. That's very, very important.
And you just go build all the ADUs you want, huh?
If you go with the bonus ADU strategy, now you just have to keep in mind that those ADUs have to be designated for a low income to moderate income.
Okay.
Okay. Take a look at the regulations, talk to a professional to figure out how all that works. It's a little bit too technical for tonight.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that opportunity is there for you. And speaking about TPAs, as I would call it, or transit priority areas, the one drawback about multi-unit properties as it relates to ADUs is the parking reliefs that you would normally get for an ADU is not available to you on a multi-unit property. What in the heck am I talking about?
Parking reliefs.
Parking reliefs. If you're in a single-family residence and you want to build an ADU in the backyard, there's a piece of rule out there that says if you're within a half a mile of public transportation, like a bus stop, then you don't have to provide parking for that ADU.
Oh, okay.
Super, super cool. But if you're in a multi-unit property and you want to do an ADU, you have to provide parking for that ADU. That parking relief doesn't apply. But if you're in a transit priority area, then there's a way around the whole parking situation. So now I'm getting real deep into the weeds, and you're going to want to work with a professional. This is another reason why you want to get a feasibility study done before you even jump on into the deep end of your ADU project.
Yeah. So back to step number 1.
As your
Completed the whole
study.
circle right there, then,
Yes.
huh? Yeah. We went from feasibility study all the way to multifamily.
Yep.
Cool.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to throw it out there, like, this is a lot of information, and it's meant to encourage you to do an ADU on your property. It's not meant to be difficult, and it's not. We are not building the Eiffel Tower in your backyard. But the point is reach out to somebody, talk to your realtor, get more information about ADUs on your property. How does it work? What are the benefits? There's so many things to consider. Your realtor will definitely help you out.
So on an ADU, this might have to get down to other laws or whatever they have restrictions. When I go build an ADU in my backyard and then I start Airbnb in it, am I running into any issues?
Major issues.
Oh,
Major.
Oh,
Dun, dun, dun.
here we go. Tell
That's
us
a great question, though, because
Yeah.
people always bring that up.
Okay.
So the words ADU, actually, that's 3 letters.
Oh, you gotcha. The letters ADU?
ADU and Airbnb can never exist in the same sentence.
Wow.
Here's why. ADUs cannot be rented for less than 30 days. Short-term rentals are not allowed with ADUs. Remember
Gotcha.
what I said earlier. ADUs is a thing. It exists to address the housing crisis, not to promote short-term rentals. Okay?
Gotcha.
Now, is it happening? Sure. The city, the county, they're not driving around enforcing this stuff, and that's the reality of it. But when the neighbors call and complain, they will come out and enforce the rules. So I'm here to tell you that you are not allowed to short-term rental your ADU.
Now, I'm with you on that. I'm just trying to find this other loophole of Airbnb and out your ADU. At what point in time does an ADU not be considered an ADU or just a shack in the back, or what's the,
Yeah.
you know, because
Great question.
what if you just built a garage and just Airbnb'd out a garage, or you just You know what I'm saying?
If you built a granny flat, if you built it as just an attachment, if you built it as anything other than an ADU, you could short-term rental that thing.
Okay, so you used to have built the
It's
granny
when
flat. I
you-
didn't build. Was that working in the plans? Is that where that happens?
It's when you get it permitted as an ADU.
Aha.
Now it's on record as an ADU.
Okay.
Because you will be filling out a deed restriction as part of the permitting process to have this thing permitted as an ADU. So now it is legally recorded on file as an accessory dwelling unit.
Gotcha.
Now, if you don't go through all of that and this thing is never called an ADU, then that little rule about not being able to short-term rent this thing doesn't apply.
There's your loophole. There's your loophole. For the right?
They're out there. It's definitely happening.
Dang. So that's I mean, Airbnb's rocking, dude. They got their stuff well, who knows about right now, but they were previously.
Hey, here's something I want to bring to your attention. If you're listening to this and you know your garage has already been converted, you know you got a granny flat on your backyard and that thing was never permitted, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you bought the house and it was already there. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Or maybe you did build it. I'm here to tell you, you still didn't do anything wrong. California wants these ADUs so bad that counties, cities are turning a blind eye to this thing. There's an amnesty period going on right now. They want you to submit plans and get your granny flat, get your unpermitted garage conversion permitted. It works out in your favor and it's better for the community. It's going to be safer in the long run. Let's make sure that these things are built to code. And if it's not to code, we'll make it so. No big deal, right? But you're not going to get penalized. You're not going to get fined. You're not going to get in trouble, nothing like that.
Gotcha. They're not going to make you
Right.
tear it down and start over, do anything?
No. Here's the benefit.
Okay, yeah.
The benefit is once you have it permitted as an ADU, you can include that square footage as livable space.
On your house?
Yes.
So you just went from a 2,500 square foot up to a 3,000 square foot, or
That's right.
4,000 or whatever you want it to be.
Exactly.
Wow.
So because if you don't permit that thing, when you go to sell your property, you can certainly say, hey, I've got this granny flat in the backyard,
Yeah.
but that buyer doesn't have to pay for it because it's not even permitted. But if you get it permitted, now you could claim that square footage as legal, livable square footage.
Cool.
Yeah. So if there was ever a time to get your project permitted, it is now. So you mentioned something just a few minutes ago. So they're not going to make me tear this thing down. I'm telling you no. But are they going to make you rip open the drywall to prove to them that the framing was tied in the proper way? Very, very, very likely. Okay.
Oh, wow.
But I personally would rather go through that because I could easily patch up a piece of drywall. I'd rather go through that, get this thing done right so that it's safe for me, it's safe for my tenant. Because frankly, if it's unpermitted and I've got renters in there, if they slip and fall or hurt themselves, I got a serious legal issue going on.
Damn.
And that's going to be very, very bad. So get your unpermitted ADU permitted right now. And there are folks out there that can easily get that done for you.
So what's the best way? If I had a couple ADUs sitting on the back lot,
Yep.
what am I going to do?
So you want to call an architect or a draftsman or a design firm or WDU Geeks.
ADUgeeks.com.
WDUgeeks.com.
You guys got a landing page. You just go right there, name, phone number, email,
Call
boom.
855-999-GEEK.
Cool.
855-999-GEEK. We'll come out to your property, assess the situation, but for us, it's as easy as getting the existing structure as built, designed on a set of plans that we could ultimately turn into the city or the county and get it reviewed and then ultimately get it permitted. What's really nice for us is it doesn't have to be built because it's already built, right?
Oh, right. Yeah, you just got to go, paperwork.
It's really just a matter of paperwork. So for us, we've done so many of these that it's just a streamlined process.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on, dude. So how else can we bring in the benefits of someone? So now I am a person looking
To buy.
a house. We went through the seller thing already.
What do we
you know what I mean? So we went through the seller thing on what we're going to do with the ADU, but now I'm going to come in and I'm like, okay, I want my house. It needs to be 2,500 square feet, 3 beds, 2 baths, but I'm also have my mom's going to live in the ADU. right? That can be a situation where people are getting in, and nowadays is like, okay, instead of sending them away to an old folks home, you can now keep them in their backyard in a nice little granny flat.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's kind of the play they're doing right now.
So many reasons to have an ADU. One reason, as you explained, is to have family around. Keep moms around, or if your kids are grown up, you want them to stay close but not too far. You can use the ADU, or maybe you're at an age where you can use a caretaker at home, or maybe you can house the caretaker in the ADU. There's so many different reasons to have an ADU. And then you also have the flexibility of renting it out and making some cash flow for yourself. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to talk about is if you're looking to buy a piece of property in order to build an ADU, there are certain things that you have to consider. One, what's the zoning? Is it single family residence or is it multi-unit? Okay. Some people know it as, is it residential or is it multifamily, right? So understand what the zoning is. Then you want to take a look at the backyard. Do I have a lot of backyard space? And when you're considering that, you need to look around and understand those invisible areas that you can't build in, known as setbacks. Earlier, I said they were 4 feet, okay? Could you build an ADU in the front yard? Technically, yes, you absolutely can. But you've got a front yard setback that you cannot encroach on, period. And those things are usually 15, 20, 30 feet.
Gotcha.
That's why nothing's built in the front yard, okay? So we talked about the need to understand what the zoning is. Do you have enough backyard space? Is the grading flat? Do you have a steep hillside in the backyard? Is it flat? How much earth are we going to have to move? Because a grading permit in the process and doing the grading, that alone can make a project not even feasible, depending on your timeline and your budget. Okay. You also want to take a look at the utilities. Where are the utilities on the existing house? Is it going to be a long run from the ADU to the house or not?
Oh.
And the cool thing about utilities, since I've just brought that up, is you could separate the utilities. You can have
a whole new box.
You can have the ADU running on its own utilities, meaning your tenant is paying their own bills and you don't have to do anything. Really, really convenient. And that ADU does rate its own address.
Oh, really? Okay. How does that 123 Street unit A?
It could be 123 Unit B, 123 and a half.
Oh, yeah.
It really depends on the city or the county that you're in.
Okay.
They will dictate what that new address is. It's not something that you get to choose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. ADUs. So tell us, so that we went through this learning phase, right? We just learned. Tell us some cool stuff, man. What's the coolest thing you did with the ADU? Like, as far as let's go to a profit maker. Tell us about a profit maker on these ADUs.
I can't say that on camera.
No, like you built one for a client, and then your client went to sell the house for more than they would have gotten it without the ADU. How did that all play out?
What I think is important right now is to talk about is the fact that ADUs really is a cash flow play.
Cash flow play.
Yeah. Versus like a flip.
Okay. So now on
I think that's really important.
Yeah. So let's see. How about like the most luxurious or the biggest one or the most ridiculous build? Do you have any stories like that?
So the biggest ADU project that we've worked on so far is one that's called the Mississippi. This thing is a 2-story ADU, 1,200 square feet down below, 1,200 square feet above. We were actually able to get a carport on the bottom half and an office space on the other bottom half. And then up on top were 2 600 square foot ADUs. And in those 600 square foot units, we were able to get 2 bedrooms. So you've got a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom on top, times 2. Down below, you've got an office space, which is essentially 600 square feet, and then a carport that was able to house 2 cars. That was done in the backyard, and it was godly looking. which is awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, and last time I checked on that project, they just sold that property. So they were able to get a lot more for that property than they would have if they did not build an ADU.
Oh, sure.
It'd take some time to get there for sure, but this company marketed it right and they got top dollar for it.